The broken ship came out of nowhere. It moved slowly through the darkness of space, like a wounded animal looking for a safe place to rest. The hull was damaged in many places, and smoke leaked from cracks in the metal. Inside were 300 aliens who had escaped from their homeworld with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Daniel Cooper was working in his small laboratory on Armstrong Station when the emergency alarm started ringing. He was a 32-year-old engineer who spent his days building devices to help blind humans see again. He had soft brown eyes, messy hair, and hands that were always busy with some new invention. When he heard the alarm, he put down his tools and ran to the docking bay like everyone else. The aliens who came off the ship were unlike anything Daniel had ever seen. They were tall and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow under the station lights. Each of them had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond shape on their faces, and 4 arms instead of 2. They moved gracefully, almost like dancers, but their faces showed fear and exhaustion. Daniel helped carry supplies to the refugees. He gave them water and food and blankets. Most of them accepted his help with quiet nods and grateful looks. But then he noticed something strange happening near the back of the group. A young female alien sat alone on a metal crate. She was smaller than the others, probably the equivalent of a human teenager. Golden bands wrapped around her wrists, marking her as someone important. But what caught Daniel's attention was the way the other aliens avoided her. They walked around her like she was invisible, or like they were afraid to get too close. When Daniel approached her, he understood why. Her 4 eyes were covered with a milky white film. She was completely blind. An older male alien stepped between Daniel and the girl. His name was Valon, and he spoke English in a slow and careful way. "Please," Valon said, "do not trouble yourself with her. She is Caravel, daughter of High Counselor Miravel, but she cannot see. Among our people, this means she is cursed by the gods. She is not allowed to own anything. She cannot marry. She cannot participate in our sacred rituals. We brought her here because there was no place for her on our world." Daniel felt his stomach twist with anger. He looked at the young girl sitting alone on the crate. Her hands were shaking, but she held her head high. Even though she could not see, she seemed to know that people were talking about her. Her jaw was set with quiet determination. "That's terrible," Daniel said. "In my society, we don't treat blind people that way. We help them. We give them tools so they can live normal lives." Valorn's eyes widened with surprise. "You have such tools?" Daniel thought about the neural interface technology he had been developing for years. It was designed for humans, not aliens. But the basic principle might work for anyone with a brain and optical nerves. "I might be able to help her," Daniel said. "But I would need to study her biology first. And she would have to agree to let me try." Valorn turned and spoke to Caravel in their native language. The girl listened carefully, then responded in a voice that was stronger than Daniel expected. After a moment, Valorn nodded. "She says she has nothing left to lose. She will let you try." That night, Daniel could not sleep. He kept thinking about Caravel and the unfairness of her situation. She had been born with a disability that she did not choose, and her entire society had decided she was worthless because of it. It made him angry in a way he had not felt in years. The next morning, he started working on the project. He spent hours studying Valorian biology, learning how their brains processed information, mapping the pathways that should have connected to their eyes. Caravel was patient through all of it. She sat still while he ran scans and tests, never complaining even when the procedures took a long time. As the days passed, Daniel began to know her better. She was smart and curious about everything. She asked questions about human culture, about Earth, about the stars. She had taught herself to read Valorian text by touch, even though her people said it was impossible for a blind person to learn. Why did you learn to read? Daniel asked her one day. Because they told me I could not, she answered through the translation device. I wanted to prove them wrong. Daniel smiled. He liked her spirit. She reminded him of himself when he was young, always pushing against the limits that other people tried to put on him. Building the visor took 3 weeks. It was the most complicated device Daniel had ever made. The headpiece wrapped around Kiravel's head like a crown, with sensors positioned over each of her 4 eyes. The neural interface would translate visual information directly into signals her brain could understand. I have to warn you, Daniel said on the day of the first test. This might not work. And even if it does work, what you see might be strange at first. Your brain has never processed visual information before. It will need time to learn. Kiravel nodded. I understand. I am ready. Daniel took a deep breath and activated the visor. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Kiravel made a sound that was half gasp and half sob. Tears began streaming down her face from beneath the visor. Daniel's heart sank. He reached for the power switch, ready to turn it off. No, Kiravel whispered. Do not stop it. These are not tears of pain. I am crying because I can see colors. Is that what light looks like? It is so beautiful. She raised one of her hands slowly, watching it move in front of her face with wonder. I have fingers, she said. I knew I had them. I could feel them my whole life. But I never knew what they looked like. They are beautiful too. Daniel felt his own eyes growing wet. He had spent years working on this technology, facing failure after failure. But in this moment, watching this young girl see her own hand for the first time, all of those struggles felt worth it. Welcome to the world of sight, he said softly. Kiravel turned her head, looking around the room at everything she had never seen before. The walls, the ceiling, the lights, the window showing stars outside. Each new thing made her gasp with fresh amazement. Thank you, she said finally, her voice thick with emotion. You have given me a gift I can never repay. Daniel shook his head. You do not need to repay me. Just use this gift to live a good life. That is enough. But even as he said those words, Daniel did not know how much this simple act of kindness would change. He did not know that this blind girl and her new visor would shake the foundations of an entire empire. He did not know that he had just started a revolution. All he knew was that he had helped someone who needed help, and that felt like the right thing to do. The weeks after Kiravel received her visor were filled with discovery. Every day brought something new for her to see, and every new sight filled her with joy. She would spend hours looking at simple things that most people ignored. The way light reflected off metal surfaces, the patterns that shadows made on the floor, the different colors of food on her plate. Daniel became her guide through this new world of sight. He showed her pictures of Earth with its blue oceans and green forests. He explained how rainbows formed and why the sky changed colors at sunset. He taught her to read human writing, which she learned faster than any student he had ever known. Your brain is amazing, he told her one afternoon. It is adapting to visual information much faster than I expected. Normally, this process takes months, but you are doing it in weeks. Kiravel smiled. It was still strange for Daniel to see her expressions now that she knew people could see her face. Before the visor, she had kept her features blank and still. Now she smiled often, and her eyes moved behind the visor as she looked at things. I have spent my whole life learning to understand the world without seeing it, she said. My mind built pictures from sounds and touches and smells. Now it is just filling in the details with real images. The other Valorian refugees watched Kiravel with complicated feelings. Some of them were happy for her and asked Daniel if he could make visors for other blind members of their group. Others kept their distance and whispered among themselves. Valon told Daniel that many of them were afraid. For 10,000 years, our people have believed that blindness is a sign from the gods, Valorn explained. The priests teach that those born blind have done something wrong in a past life. To give them sight goes against everything we were taught to believe. Do you believe that? Daniel asked. Valon was quiet for a long moment. I believed it my whole life. But now, watching Kiravel, I am not sure anymore. She does not seem cursed to me. She seems like any other young person, full of hope and curiosity. Maybe the priests were wrong. Daniel nodded. He had seen this kind of struggle before in human history. People holding on to old beliefs, even when new evidence showed those beliefs were harmful. Change was always difficult, even when it was change for the better. Kiravel spent much of her time learning about human society. She was fascinated by the idea that humans had once treated certain groups badly too, based on the color of their skin or where they came from or who they loved. But she was even more fascinated by how humans had worked to change those attitudes over time. Your people are not perfect, she said to Daniel one evening. But you try to be better. You look at your mistakes and you try to fix them. On Veloria, our leaders say that our way has always been correct and will always be correct. They say that questioning tradition is the same as attacking the gods themselves. Change is hard, Daniel agreed. And powerful people often benefit from keeping things the way they are. It takes courage to stand up and say that something is wrong. Kiravel was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was soft but steady. I want to go back to Veloria someday. I want to show my people that blind Valorians are not cursed. We are just people who need a little help to see. If humans can build devices to help us, then, surely, our own scientists could do the same. But they never tried because they believed we did not deserve to be helped. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. He understood what she was suggesting. If word of this technology reached Veloria, it could change everything. The entire foundation of their religious and social system was built on the idea that the blind were inferior. If that foundation crumbled, what would happen to the empire built on top of it? That could be dangerous, he said carefully. The people in power will not want to give up that power. They might try to stop you. I know, Kiravel said, but I cannot go back to living as I did before. Knowing what I know now, seeing what I can see now, I cannot accept that millions of blind Valorians are suffering because of a lie. I have to try to help them, even if it is dangerous. Daniel looked at this young woman who had come to him as a broken refugee just weeks ago. She had transformed into someone strong and determined, someone with a purpose that was bigger than herself. He felt proud of her and also worried for her. The news arrived 3 months later. A Valorian diplomatic ship was coming to Earth. The visitors wanted to meet with human leaders, but they also wanted to see Kiravel. The ship was commanded by High Counselor Miravel herself, Kiravel's mother. Kiravel received this news with a mixture of emotions that played across her face: fear, anger, sadness, and underneath it all, a thin thread of hope. My mother and I have not spoken in 2 years, she told Daniel. When it became clear that I would never be able to participate in society normally, she sent me away. She said that having a blind daughter was a shame to our family. She said it would have been better if I had never been born. Daniel felt his hands clench into fists. That is a cruel thing to say to your own child. She was speaking truth as she understood it. In our society, a blind child really is a source of shame. Parents of blind children lose status and respect. My mother is a politician. Having me as a daughter hurt her career. Kiravel paused. I do not excuse what she did, but I understand why she did it. What do you think she wants now? Kiravel turned to look out the window at the stars. I think she wants to take me home and take away my visor. I think she wants to pretend that none of this ever happened. But I am not the same person I was when she sent me away. I will not let her put me back in that cage. Daniel put his hand on her shoulder. You will not have to face her alone. I will be there with you. Kiravel turned back to him and smiled, though there was sadness in her eyes. Thank you, Daniel. You have been a better friend to me than anyone on my own world ever was. Whatever happens next, I want you to know that I am grateful. The diplomatic ship arrived the next day. Daniel watched it dock through the observation window, a massive vessel covered in gold and purple decorations. It looked like a floating palace, designed to show off the wealth and power of the Valorian Empire. High Counselor Miravel was the first to step off the ship. She was tall and elegant, dressed in robes that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Her four eyes swept across the docking bay with an expression of cold superiority. When her gaze found Kiravel, something flickered across her face. For just a moment, she looked like a mother seeing her child after a long separation. But then her expression hardened again, and she walked forward with the stiff posture of a ruler approaching a subject. Daughter, she said, remove that device from your head. It is time to come home. Kiravel stood her ground. No, mother. I will not go back to being nothing. I will not pretend that I do not deserve to see the world. The confrontation had begun, and watching from the side, Daniel knew that nothing would ever be the same again. 6 months had passed since Miravel returned to Valoria. In that time, everything had changed. Daniel and Kiravel had created something called the Lighthouse Network. It started small, just a few volunteers working in a converted storage room on Armstrong Station. But it grew quickly as more humans and Valorian refugees joined the cause. Now they had 3 hidden workshops producing visors around the clock, and a network of brave smugglers who carried them into Valorian space. The work was dangerous. High Counselor Miravel had declared the visors illegal and labeled anyone who possessed one a traitor to the state. Her soldiers searched homes and businesses looking for the devices. People who were caught with visors were sent to prison camps. Some disappeared entirely and were never seen again. But the harder the government pushed, the stronger the resistance grew. Every time a blind Valorian received a visor and saw the world for the first time, they became a believer in the cause. Many of them risked everything to help spread the technology to others. Daniel spent his days improving the visor design. The second version was smaller and lighter, easier to hide from inspectors. The third version had better resolution and longer battery life. Each improvement made the devices more useful and more difficult for the authorities to detect. But it was the fourth version that changed everything. Daniel had been working late one night when he made an unexpected discovery. While testing a new neural interface design, he found that the technology could do more than just help blind Valorians see. It could actually create a connection between the minds of different users. 2 people wearing connected visors could share their sensory experiences in real time. At first, Daniel was not sure what to do with this discovery. He mentioned it to Kiravel during their morning meeting, expecting her to be interested but not excited. Instead, her face lit up with understanding. Daniel, you do not realize what you have found. The communion of sight is the most sacred ritual in our religion. It is a meditation where sighted Valorians share their visual experiences with each other. They believe it brings them closer to the divine light. But the blind have always been excluded from this ritual. It was seen as impossible for us to participate. Daniel began to understand. But with this technology, blind Valorians could join the communion. They could share experiences just like everyone else. Yes, and more than that. If the sighted can share experiences with the blind, they will finally understand that we are not different from them. They will feel what we feel. They will know that we have always been worthy of connection. They called the new technology the bridge. It took several weeks to develop a stable version that could connect multiple users safely. When it was ready, They tested it with a small group of volunteers, 2 sighted Valorians and 2 blind Valorians, including Kiravel herself. The test was emotional in ways that Daniel had not expected. One of the sighted volunteers, a young male named Tolvin, broke down in tears after the connection ended. "I was taught my whole life that the blind were incomplete," he said. "That they could never truly understand beauty or meaning because they could not see. But when I connected with Kiravel, I felt her inner world. It was rich and deep and full of things I had never imagined. She understood beauty in ways that I never did. She found meaning in sounds and textures that I had always ignored." He looked at Daniel with something like shame in his eyes. "We were wrong. My people were wrong. For 10,000 years, we have been treating some of our own citizens as less than people, and we were wrong. The bridge technology spread through the resistance network even faster than the original Visors had. Something about it broke through the walls of prejudice in a way that arguments and evidence never could. When sighted Valorians actually experienced the world from a blind person's perspective, they could no longer believe the old lies about divine punishment and spiritual incompleteness. Reports came back from Valoria describing remarkable changes. Priests who performed the communion of sight were including blind participants and finding that the rituals were more powerful than before, not less. Families were reconnecting with blind relatives they had abandoned years ago. Soldiers who had been ordered to hunt down Visor users were deserting their units and joining the resistance instead. Hi, Counselor Miravel appeared on broadcast screens across the Empire. She looked tired and angry, her composure cracking around the edges. "The humans have poisoned our society with their meddling. They have corrupted our sacred traditions and turned our own people against each other. This is an attack on everything we hold dear. I call on all loyal Valorians to reject this foreign influence and return to the true path of our ancestors." But her words rang hollow. More and more Valorians were experiencing the bridge for themselves, and once they did, they could not go back to believing the old doctrines. The foundation of the Empire was crumbling, and everyone could see it happening. Daniel watched the broadcast with Kiravel beside him. She had become the unofficial leader of the resistance movement, her story inspiring millions across Valorian space. She gave interviews and speeches, always speaking calmly and clearly about the simple truth that all people deserve to be treated with dignity, regardless of how they were born. "What happens when the Empire falls?" Daniel asked her. Kiravel was quiet for a moment before answering. "That is the question I ask myself every night. Revolution is easier than rebuilding. We can tear down an unjust system, but we have to be ready to create a just one in its place. What do you want it to create?" She turned to look at him, and he was struck by how much she had changed since that first day on the refugee ship. She had been broken and hopeless then. Now she carried herself with quiet confidence, like someone who had found her purpose in life. "I want to create a society where no one is thrown away because of how they were born. A society that values every person, not just the ones who fit the old definitions of normal. Humans have a word for this kind of government. Democracy, I think, where everyone has a voice." Daniel smiled. "We are still working on getting that right ourselves." "I know, but you keep trying. That is what matters." "The trying." She reached out and took his hand. "Thank you, Daniel, for everything. You gave me sight, but more than that, you gave me hope. And hope is more powerful than any weapon." Outside the window, the stars shone bright against the darkness of space. Somewhere out there, an empire was falling and something new was being born. Daniel did not know exactly what the future would hold, but he knew that he was proud to be part of it. The revolution was not over yet. But looking at Kiravel's determined face, he believed that it would succeed. The meeting room felt cold, even though the temperature was normal. High Counselor Miravel stood on one side with her guards and advisors. Kiravel stood on the other side with Daniel and a few human officials who had come to observe. The two groups faced each other like armies preparing for battle. Miravel spoke first. Her voice was calm and controlled, but there was steel underneath her words. You do not understand what you have done, human. For 10,000 years, the doctrine of divine sight has kept our empire strong. The blind serve a purpose in our society. They remind the sighted of their blessings. They show everyone what happens when the gods withdraw their favor. This is not cruelty. This is order. Daniel felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice steady. With respect, High Counselor, what you are describing is cruelty. You are deliberately keeping millions of people in suffering so that others will feel grateful. You are using innocent people as examples to frighten the rest of the population into obedience. Miravel's eyes narrowed. You are a scientist, human. You build machines and solve problems with equations. You do not understand faith or tradition, or the delicate balance that holds a civilization together. Our system has worked for 10,000 years. Your species barely left your own planet a century ago. You have no right to judge us. Kiravel stepped forward. Her hands were trembling, but her voice was strong. Mother, I have spent my whole life being told that I was worthless. I believed it because everyone around me believed it. The priest said I was cursed. The teachers refused to teach me. The other children were told not to play with me. I thought something was wrong with me, that I deserved to be treated that way. She paused and took a deep breath. But then Daniel gave me this visor, and everything changed. I can see now, Mother. I can read and work and explore the world like anyone else. There was never anything wrong with me. The only thing that was wrong was how our society chose to treat me. Miravel's face showed no emotion. You are one person. One exception does not change a system that has served billions. But I am not the only one, Kiravel said. There are millions of blind Valorians on our home world. Millions of people who could live full lives if they were given the chance. Millions of people who are suffering right now because of a lie that our leaders have chosen to keep telling. The room went silent. Miravel and Kiravel stared at each other, mother and daughter separated by more than just distance. They were separated by two completely different ways of seeing the world. Finally, Miravel spoke. Her voice had lost some of its coldness and now carried something that sounded almost like sadness. I did not come here to argue philosophy with you, Kiravel. I came here because I received reports that are very troubling. Word of your human device has already reached Valoria. The blind are starting to ask questions. Some of them are demanding that our scientists develop similar technology. There have been protests. There's been violence. Daniel felt his stomach drop. He had known that news of the Visor would spread eventually, but he had not expected it to cause trouble so quickly. That is not our fault, he said. People have a right to know that there are options. They have a right to hope for something better. Hope is a dangerous thing when it goes against the established order, Miravel replied. Already there are groups calling themselves the Children of Light, who are sheltering blind individuals and teaching them forbidden skills. Already there are sighted Valorians who are questioning the doctrine they were raised to believe. You have planted seeds of chaos, human. And chaos destroys empires. Kiravel shook her head. What you call chaos, I call progress. What you call the established order, I call injustice. Maybe your empire deserves to change, Mother. Maybe it has been wrong for all these 10,000 years, and it is finally time for something new. Miravel's expression hardened again. Then you have made your choice. You choose these humans over your own people. You choose rebellion over loyalty. I cannot force you to come home. You are beyond my reach here. But know this, daughter. When I return to Valoria, I will do whatever is necessary to restore order. Anyone who possesses one of these devices will be arrested. Anyone who helps the blind will be punished. I will not let my empire fall because of one girl and her alien toys." She turned to leave, her guards falling in step behind her. But at the door, she paused and looked back. "I loved you, Kiravel. When you were born, I held you in my arms, and I loved you more than anything. But then your eyes turned white, and I knew that our society would never accept you. I sent you away because I thought it would be easier for both of us. I see now that I was wrong about many things. But I am not wrong about this. What you are starting will cause suffering that you cannot imagine." Then she was gone, and the room felt empty without her presence. Kiravel stood very still for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but steady. "She is going to hurt people, Daniel. She is going to crack down on anyone who supports the blind. There will be arrests and maybe worse. All because of what I did." Daniel took her hands in his. "No, this is not your fault. You did not create the injustice in your society. You only shone a light on it. The people who are fighting for change were waiting for something to give them hope. You gave them that hope. But what good is hope if it just leads to suffering?" Daniel thought carefully before answering. "On Earth, we have had many struggles for justice. People fought to end slavery. People fought for equal rights regardless of skin color or gender. Those fights were hard and painful, and many people suffered. But in the end, the world became better. Change always comes with a cost, but sometimes the cost is worth paying." Kiravel looked at him with eyes that had seen so little but understood so much. "Then we need to help them. The blind Valorians who are fighting for their rights. The sighted allies who are risking everything to support them. We cannot sit here safely while they face danger alone. What do you want to do?" Kiravel squared her shoulders. "I want to build more visors. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. I want to send them to Valoria and give sight to every blind person who wants it. If my mother is going to try to crush this movement, then we need to make sure the movement is too big to crush." Daniel felt a mixture of fear and admiration. What she was proposing was dangerous. It could be seen as an act of war against the Valorian Empire. It could put Earth in a very difficult position. But looking at Kiravel's determined face, he knew that she was right. Sometimes doing the right thing meant taking risks. Sometimes hope was worth fighting for. "Okay," he said. "Let's do it. Let's build an army of visors." Kiravel smiled, and in that smile, Daniel saw the future beginning to take shape. It would be difficult and dangerous and full of uncertainty, but it would also be meaningful in a way that few things in his life had ever been. Together, they began to plan. The Valorian Empire officially ended on a quiet morning in spring. There was no great battle, no dramatic final confrontation. The old system simply stopped working because too many people had stopped believing in it. High Councillor Miravel fled into exile on a distant colony world. Some of her supporters went with her, but most stayed behind to face whatever came next. The military had split into factions months earlier, with more soldiers joining the resistance than staying loyal to the old government. By the end, there was almost no one left to fight for the Empire. In its place, the Valorian Commonwealth was born. The founding ceremony took place in the Great Hall of Light, a building that had once been reserved only for the highest religious rituals. For 10,000 years, no blind person had ever been allowed inside its walls. Now the hall was filled with Valorians of all kinds, sighted and blind, rich and poor. From every colony and every walk of life, Kiravel stood at the front of the crowd. Wearing simple clothes instead of the robes her status would have demanded in the old days. She had refused any special title or position in the new government. She said she wanted to serve as an ordinary citizen, nothing more. But when she stepped forward to speak, everyone fell silent. Her voice carried through the hall, clear and strong. We are here today because our people made a choice. We chose to look at our oldest traditions and ask if they were truly just. We chose to listen to those who had been silenced for generations. We chose to believe that our society could change, even when change seemed impossible. She paused and looked out at the crowd. I was born blind. For the first 18 years of my life, I was told that this made me worthless. I was told that the gods had cursed me, that I could never contribute anything meaningful to society, that it would have been better if I had never been born. I believed these things because everyone around me believed them. Her voice softened. Then a human engineer named Daniel Cooper decided to help me. He did not know me. He had no reason to care about my problems. But he saw someone who was suffering, and he chose to act. He built a device that let me see for the first time. And in doing so, he showed me that everything I had been taught was a lie. Daniel stood in the back of the hall, trying to stay out of sight. He had never wanted attention or credit. But Kiravel found him with her eyes and smiled. Daniel taught me something important. He taught me that kindness does not need a reason. That helping others is not a transaction where you expect something in return. That sometimes the simplest acts of compassion can change the world in ways you never imagined. She held up a document written on traditional Valorian paper. This is our new constitution. Its first words are these: all Valorians, whether sighted or not, are equal in dignity and worthy of full participation in our society. This is the foundation of everything we are building. This is the promise we make to each other and to future generations. The crowd erupted in cheers. Many people were crying, including some who had spent their entire lives believing they would never see a day like this. After the ceremony, Daniel and Kiravel walked together through the gardens outside the Great Hall. Trees from both Valoria and Earth had been planted side by side, their different colored leaves mixing together in the gentle breeze. I have been thinking, Kiravel said, about what would have happened if you had not helped me that day on the station. Daniel shook his head. You would have found another way. You are the strongest person I have ever known. Maybe, or maybe I would have lived out my life as a forgotten refugee, never knowing what I was capable of becoming. She stopped walking and turned to face him. You changed my life, Daniel. But more than that, you changed my world. How does one thank someone for that? Daniel smiled. You already did. You took what I gave you and turned it into something much bigger. I just built a Visor. You built a revolution. We built it together. Humans and Valorians working side by side. I think that is the most important part of the story. It shows that different species can help each other become better than they would be alone. They continued walking in comfortable silence. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that Kiravel could now see and appreciate. She had told Daniel once that sunsets were her favorite thing about having sight. They reminded her that beauty could be found even at the end of things. What will you do now? Daniel asked. There is much work to be done. We need to rebuild our education system so that blind children get the same opportunities as everyone else. We need to train doctors and scientists to make visors and bridge devices for anyone who needs them. We need to change thousands of laws that treated the blind as less than full citizens. She smiled. I will probably be busy for many years. And after that, I would like to try scientific research. The kind where you ask questions about the universe and try to find answers. Perhaps you could teach me. Daniel laughed. I would like that. Though I should warn you, research involves a lot of failure before you get any success. Then it is perfect for someone who spent her whole life being told she was a failure. I have had much practice at not giving up. They reached the edge of the garden where a small fountain bubbled peacefully. Daniel sat down on a bench and looked up at the first stars appearing in the darkening sky. "You know," he said, "when I first started working on neural interface technology, I never imagined anything like this. I just wanted to help people with vision problems live better lives. I never thought I would help bring down an empire." Kiravel sat down beside him. "That is the thing about kindness. You never know how far it will reach. You help one person, and that person helps another. And the chain keeps going until it changes things you never could have predicted." "Is that a Valorian proverb?" "No, I just made it up." She smiled. "But I think it is true." The stars grew brighter as the sky darkened. Somewhere up there, in the vast expanse of space, millions of Valorians were waking up to their first day in a new kind of society. They would face challenges and setbacks in the years to come. Change was never easy, and not everyone would welcome it. But they had taken the first step, and that was what mattered. Daniel thought about his small laboratory on Armstrong Station, where this whole journey had begun. He thought about the scared blind girl who had sat alone on a cargo crate, abandoned by her own people. He thought about all the choices that had led them from that moment to this one. He had started by trying to help one person see. He had ended up helping an entire civilization see itself differently. And looking at Kiravel beside him, her face peaceful in the starlight, he knew that this was only the beginning. There were more injustices in the universe waiting to be challenged, more people who needed help, more walls that needed to come down. But that was okay. They had time, and they had hope. That was enough.